Retirement is one of those things we dream about throughout our work life. If you have a retirement plan, you've been working towards that magic date for years. Now, if you're like me, the closer you get, the scarier the concept gets. Am I going to have enough money? What am I going to do with my time? Am I really going to have a purpose? Will I still have an identity that means something to me? These are all things that we struggle with. I recently had the opportunity to sit down with host Michael Fritzius, and we created a conversation around how retirement is about so much more than the money. So the five of us friends are just sitting down to visit about our purpose in retirement. We're going to talk about the financial aspect of it, and we're also going to talk about travel and how that can be an exciting part of retirement. I really hope you'll join us because it is a fun and engaging conversation. Look forward to seeing you there. Do you fear what lies beyond retirement? What if it's a gateway to a life filled with purpose, meaning, and adventure rather than an end? Discover peace and fulfillment as you boldly enter this new chapter in Courageous Retirement, a Christian podcast. I'm your host, author and coach, Vona Johnson. Let's get started.
This is more than money, how to prepare for a retirement in a way that matters. I think Vona and I and everybody else that's a panelist on here can agree it's more than just accruing a bunch of money and nibbling on it until the day you die. It's like, how do you build a retirement that actually lasts and makes a legacy? So I'm going to go ahead and introduce the first of the three panelists. We're going to kick things off with Miss Amanda Hietter. So Amanda and I have been friends for at least a little bit, and I think we know how we met. We probably met at a networking meeting or bumped into each other at a Panera, something like that. But she's in the travel space. She runs a business called Across the Horizon Travel, and she is a massive expert. I'll say maven, travel maven. She's really good at what she does. And if you want to know how to build an experience that makes for lasting memories in the years of retirement, Amanda is the gal. And I'm going to switch over to Vona now. She's going to introduce Mike Perez because I don't know that guy, and she knows him better than I do.
Well, I'd be lying if I said Mike and I were best friends, but we met online like so many of us do anymore. And he found my profile, reached out, we hopped on a call and visited for a while. And he's a speaker and an author. He's a partner in a national financial organization. And he has, as you can see on the screen behind him there, he's got his company called Finish the Race Strong, which I think really parallels exactly what we're talking here today about, just retirement. And it's more than the money. It's so much more than the money. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So welcome, Mike. Thanks for
Yeah.
agreeing to join us today.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me, Vonna. This is awesome.
Yeah. Well, and then we've got Dan Simon, founder of Dan Simon Solutions, and he is a leadership coach. And I've learned quite a bit from him. This isn't the first time we've crossed swords. Well, that sounds combative. This is the first time we've interacted at this level. He's been in panel discussions before. He's taken part in talks, and he's just an all-around good guy. He's got such a good nature, but it's the deep leadership. Like when you work with him, you can feel you're in good hands. Like if you're wanting to learn how to be an awesome leader, if you want to leave an awesome legacy for your family, for your employees, he's an excellent guy to have in your court. I want to welcome Dan to the panel. I'll kick us off with the first question, which is going to be for Amanda and Dan both. So get ready. So Amanda, this question is for you first. Both of you work with people who are stepping into a new chapter in life or leadership. So how do you help them move past fear and uncertainty into clarity about what's next? Amanda, over to you.
So my niche is working with coaches who want to scale their businesses through hosting retreats. And the way that I help them find clarity is we talk about what their vision is for the retreat, and we kind of go from there. So dive into what the experience is going to entail. And then I have multiple questions that we just continue down that path to where we're niching it down to something that's going to be a very, very cool experience for the attendees themselves.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Dan, same question. How do you get people to come out the other side of fear and uncertainty so that they can, move forward with awesomeness?
So my work is really with kind of two different client avatars, I suppose, right? You could say the majority of my work, having been a lifetime educator at the secondary level, is adolescents that are entering the phase of choosing vocation, college, or career. And I also spend quite a bit of time working with military students in particular because of the challenges there. And what I find is that when you're talking about uncertainty about what's next, I know we're talking retirement, but I want to give a perspective on this because I think it overlaps. There's the idea of putting it off, right? What happens is we put off the task too often. I'll think about it later. I'll wait out plenty of time to think about that. And so when you kind of translate that onto adults that I work with, many of them are transitioning out of the military. It's the same kind of questions. Like you're just used to doing things a certain way. You kind of doing it that way for a long time. You're comfortable there. So a little bit of it is asking some uncomfortable questions. It's about trying to understand, like, I've thought about this, but it's never really been an option. It's something, but I never really knew how to do that. And so starting to engage in those conversations early, to me, is what really helps you when the time comes and you get there. You're more prepared, more confident in being able to do that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Asking the hard questions early and often. Very cool. Vona, what's the next question on the docket, my dear?
Actually, I hope you don't mind, but I'm just going to say, Dan, I love that. And what I love about it is when I'm talking to people that are kind of like, I don't know, retirement, and it seems so big and everything, a lot of times I take them back to, what did you want to do when you were a kid? What did you love? Because sometimes we skip over that when we get forced into these pockets that we think we have to do. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So the next question for both of you is, how does building community, whether through travel or leadership development, help people thrive in retirement? And this time, let's start with Dan.
Well, when my book eventually gets written, you can ask my wife about that one. She's cracking the whip and I'm just not responding well. But yeah, the title of the book is actually going to be Not Perfect, Just Perfect Together. And the nature is that we're not meant to do life alone, right? We're not to, we were created to do things in community. And so I think that the idea of that community, who are the people around you that are that press you, right? But in a loving way. Who are the people who are going to help you challenge? Because oftentimes, right, we have this kind of designed humility, and we just don't think we're good enough to do that, or we just don't think that that's not really what I've been, I like doing that, but I'm not really all that good at it, or whatever the case may be. You need the people around you who've surrounded you your whole life, whether professionally, personally, through ministry, to be able to say, no, when I'm around you, you just make me feel this way. Or when I talk to you, I just hear things that I don't hear from anybody else. And so those are the people that you need to always have around you, so that when you're starting again to think about what might be next, those are the people who can reinforce, like, either, yes, I think that's the right lane, or, well, that's not the gifting that I think you have. I think it might be maybe more this way. So that's the value of surrounding yourself with that community.
Love it. Thank you. Amanda, same question.
Yeah, so I personally love putting together group trips. And the reason I do that is because I am a single woman and I want to travel with other people. So especially for retirees, and sometimes I even think of women or men that are widowed, traveling in a group is so key, because the people that you get to meet are usually people that have a sense of adventure. And when you are getting ready to retire, surrounding yourself with people that maybe have a mindset that's a little bit different than others, because I know personally people that travel internationally have a totally different mindset than people that stay within the US. So getting to connect with those types of people and maybe thinking of ideas outside the box. For me, I became a travel agent because I never want to retire technically. Like when I retire, I'll still be working this business. So maybe when you are retiring, I always say retire, but then you need to have a purpose outside of that. So when you're traveling with these people that are thinking outside the box, going to these places like Aruba, Costa Rica, Alaska, whatever it might be, they may give you an idea of, hey, this is a way that I can retire, but then I can still maybe make a little bit of extra income or get involved in a ministry or get involved in church with something I never thought I could do. So being a part of a community that travels together will really help them think outside the box.
Nice.
Thank you.
Love it. Love it.
Back to you, Fritz.
All right. So, Amanda and Dan, in your experience, what's one overlooked non-financial factor that can make or break someone's post-career fulfillment? And we'll go with Amanda first this time.
Oh, that's a tough one. Honestly, not like thinking ahead. That can definitely make or break you. If you're not planning ahead when it comes to retirement financially, and I know it's a non-financial factor, but planning ahead with that is something that you definitely need to do. And what I mean by that is if you're putting away, like banking away different places that you want to travel to. For me, I have this huge long bucket list. And so when I look at that bucket list, I'm planning, okay, maybe in like 2028, I'm going to go here. So planning ahead and for things like that can definitely help you be able to be more prepared for your future travels.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Dan, same question. What's a non-financial factor that can make or break someone's post-career fulfillment?
Well, I think it's purpose, right? I mean, we've already heard that come up here today. I mean, when we work, we work because we know we're going to make an impact in some way, right? And then when we stop working, then the question is, well, now how am I gonna make an impact, and who am I gonna make an impact on, right? So, like for me, the being in almost 35 years in education, adolescent education, like I retired from my job, but I'm still impacting adolescents in the work that I do because I feel like that's where God has designed me to be, and that's my purpose. But it's a different way now, right? He's kind of molded me into a path where I'm still having an impact, but a different kind of impact. I think you have to have alignment with your purpose and what that is. What are your skill set? What are your strengths? What are your passions? But ultimately, when you're not doing it for a paycheck necessarily, what are you doing it for? And so to me, that's the place where the purpose is the most important non-financial, kind of motivation or fulfillment in what you're going to do post-retirement. And you may not find it right away. Sometimes you're going to try things and you're going to be like, yeah, this isn't it. So it's when you really feel like that, yeah, this is it, and confident that God's led me there. I think that's what it is.
Awesome. You hit on a good point too, because sometimes people shy away from trying to find their purpose because they think, well, what if I try something and I waste my time and it's not actually the thing? Hey, that's data you didn't have before. You didn't know that wasn't going to be the thing, but now that you know that's not it, that kind of helps narrow things down. Anything that's similar to that is going to be a hard no. There's like whole swaths of things that you can just drop on the floor. It's amazing.
I would just add to that, and I know I'm over my time, but I'm borrowing the 30 seconds Amanda left. When you talk about, it's the same thing with adolescents, starting that conversation in high school, right? Trying things, experiencing things to say either, wow, I'm glad I did that because I love that, or I'm glad I did that because I don't want anything to do with that for the rest of my life. So it's experiencing and finding. Then when you find that alignment,
Yep.
When my son was in college, he kept taking like a course line and he'd be like, yeah, no, I hate that. And I kept saying, you know what? Sometimes it's better to know what you don't want than what you do want.
Yep.
Same thing in retirement.
It's very valuable. Very valuable.
Awesome.
Well, we got another pairing of question receivers here, Amanda and Michael. So, Vona, what's the first question on the docket for those two?
Yeah. So you guys both focus on strategic planning. Amanda, you do for finances. Michael, you for finances and purpose. How do you help people dream big? I love this one. How do you help people dream big about retirement without letting the fear of cost hold them back? You might be speaking directly to me or maybe not. I don't know. But we're going to start with Mike first, just to give him a chance. He's got to be itching to talk. So go, Mike.
Yeah, I've been just kind of sitting here listening. I just had a thought about, like I say to my daughter all the time that nothing is failure. It's just information, and it shows you where you go next. I think I've actually got a book sitting right across from me over there called Dream Big. And I think one of the unfortunate things about life is that as we age, we dream less. I mean, that's been my observation. And we forget what it was like to dream as a young kid. And so one of the things that I've always tried to do in the people that I engage with is just get them to dreaming again. And as they head into this season of life, do it without restraints. Start there. Just start dreaming and figuring out what you might like to do in the future. One of my favorite questions to ask people in this season of life is, what would you like to do in this life before your time is up? Because I think that becomes the kind of the foundation for what will become kind of the bucket list. And a lot of people have never been asked that question, so sometimes they don't really know how to answer it. But I do think it's a good question. The other observation is, I think so many people act like they have so much time in this second half of life. And in one of my workshops, there's a book that I refer to called the fourth quarter of your life. I can't remember the rest of the title. It's like the fourth quarter of your life, embracing what matters most. And, you know, a lot of people, when they think about the future, they think about, well, I've got 100 years, right? So I've got plenty of time. And what they fail to realize is the average life expectancy is 80. 35% of the folks make it to 90, and only 1% of the folks make it to 100. So they can't act like they have lots of time. And I always encourage people to live with a sense of urgency. One of my favorite quotes is out of the movie The Shawshank Redemption, where Andy Dufresne said, you either get busy living or you get busy dying. Yep. And so we try to inspire people to get busy living. The other thing is, I don't want people to have regrets. I've seen too many people, they get too far down the line and then they look back and they go, I didn't do what I really wanted to do when I had the chance. And so I encourage people, I'm like, get after it, go do it now, dream big, make things happen, because you don't know what the future is going to hold. And obviously this all has to be coordinated with the money, because you can't just do whatever you want, but you start with the dreaming.
Thank you. Amanda, do you remember the question?
Yes, I do. And I'll try to make it short, which I'm good at doing. So what's really awesome is that you're asking the question about, what do we do to help our clients dream big? And actually the slogan for Across the Horizon Travel is dream big and travel bigger. So when we're working with our clients, we want to find out those bucket list destinations that they want to go to. And usually it's places that maybe seem just a little bit too far out of reach, like Singapore, Japan, or Australia, like on the other side of the world, if you live in the United States. And so when I'm talking to my clients and they're saying, okay, how much do you think this is going to cost? And I give them a number and they're like, oh my gosh, we don't have that. That's not put aside. I talk with them about the strategy of opening up a travel savings account. And if you are a W-2 employee, you can actually coordinate with your bank to have money taken out before that money even hits your bank account and put into that travel savings account. And you're not able to touch it, I believe, for a year, 2 years, whatever you set it for, so that you can use that as a deposit or even to pay off your whole trip, depending on how much money you're putting in for that. So I always find that to be something that is key when it comes to preparing and strategizing for a trip that might seem a little bit out of reach for my client.
That sounds like a great strategy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, I heard the term bucket list come up a little bit ago. So how can intentional travel or bucket list experiences actually strengthen someone's legacy? And Mike, since you used the B term, the B word, bucket list before, I'm gonna come to you first. So
you got it. Am I the only one that cried at that movie? Oh my God.
It was good.
I love the word legacy. One of the questions that I ask people a lot is, what do you want to be remembered for? A lot of people don't get asked that question much, but I think most of us would prefer to be remembered as somebody that lived life to the fullest. I always encourage people to be a role model for those around them, their family members, their friends. I know I have, at the season of life where I am, I see a lot of my peers kind of packing it in and kind of taking the safe route for the rest of their lives. And so I try to be inspiration to them that you can live out these bucket list things. And The other thing that I think is really cool about it is just having incredible memories to look back on. Number one, with the people that you experienced it with, but it's always fun to, when you're in mixed company, to tell stories about all these great adventures that you've had. So I think living this out can be a really cool part of one's legacy.
Beautiful, beautiful. Amanda, over to you. Intentional travel, bucket list experiences. How do you think that actually strengthens someone's legacy?
So as a mom, I have wanted in the past to take my children on trips to places that were on my bucket list. And I actually got the pleasure of doing that, not one time, not two times, but actually 4 times. And I'm still continuing to do that. I have made it to be something where each and every year I take my kids on a new trip to a new destination. And as I look back on those experiences, I think about how at Christmas time, we all give each other gifts. My kids cannot remember what gift I gave to them last year. Now, they still talk about the experience that we took back in 2022 when we went to Mexico. And it was their first time as older kids being outside of the country. So I'm creating a legacy that way with my children. And if you think about it with doing like a multi-generational trip with mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, aunts and uncles, cousins, siblings, everybody getting together and maybe having a cruise experience, that can build a legacy in itself, where maybe the young nieces and nephews are seeing their aunt for the first time dancing on the dance floor. And that's something that they're going to remember forever, of like, Aunt Amanda was so much fun on the dance floor. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life. So honestly, doing a group trips, taking your kids on trips, that is the perfect way to continue your legacy as a parent, sibling, mother, father, whatever it might be.
Yep, 100% heard there. And I think too, it's like, what are the chances that a family that travels like that on a regular basis is not going to travel? The future generations aren't going to stay at home and be a bunch of homebodies. I will just have a staycation. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that at all. So awesome. Vona, what's the next question for
Well, and I
Amanda
love
and
that.
Michael?
Yeah, I love this. And I mean, you guys have kind of touched on it already,
Yeah.
but I like how Fritz expanded this. So it's like, what role do these shared experiences that you guys have already touched on, family trips, mission, travel, etc., what role do they play in shaping a God honoring retirement? And I love that, bringing it into how can we honor God through that? So, Amanda, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah. So one thing that Across the Horizon Travel does is we actually put together faith-based trips every year. Next year, we're going to Greece, and I'm really excited about that. And I've incorporated in a full day of us giving back to the community, where we're either going to go into an orphanage, a school, or a church, whatever it might be when it gets closer to that time of travel, for what is needed most. And so if you are someone that's on the verge of retiring and you're like, what can I do to still continue to grow God's kingdom? You can easily do that through missions trips, through travel, doing like bringing the book of Acts to life, what we're going to be doing in October. So honestly, travel in itself can become something so much more. A lot of people forget about the fact where you can have that fun, what we call like personal travel, but then incorporate in some kind of ministry or missions while you're there to give back to the community. And that is a way really to honor God through your retirement. If you're going to be retiring, and most people say when they retire, I'm going to travel, well, incorporate giving back. And that is the way that you're going to be able to share God's love, be able to witness to others, and potentially bring people to Christ. And that is one of the most amazing things you can do when you're traveling, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I have not forgotten. I got my passports. I'm getting there.
Yay! I'm so excited, Vona.
Mike, do you remember the question? How
I
can we
remember
do
the
that?
question. I love what Amanda was just saying. That is great stuff. And I think, I mean, in this season of life, the purpose of all of this is to really create memories and to create bonding. And I think a lot of people, when they think of, especially like travel and some of these other things, that, it's all about having a good time and that. But, number one, you get to see the people you're with maybe in a different light because you're in a different set of circumstances. But I love the the concept of going on vacation and actually serving. We have actually, as a family, we took a group of college students. We've actually vacationed and served down in Guatemala. And man, those are really rich trips, and they're God honoring. And it's something I think really, I've actually seen a lot of people that are retired doing that sort of thing. The other thing that I think would be very God honoring in retirement is I love it when I see grandparents taking their grandchildren on trips without their parents, and exposing them to the things that they may not have been exposed to. Obviously, it's a way to help out their parents financially by stepping in and doing things like that. So yeah, that you can be really intentional with these shared experiences to create some really cool bonding experiences and memories.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you. Back to you, Fritz.
Awesome. So this one's for Dan and Mike. Both of you guide people to discover their calling. How does that process change for someone approaching or already in retirement? So Dan, go ahead and come off mute and rap at us.
Well, I don't think it's any different from other phases in life, right? That's why I say, I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with adolescents who are probably in that first transition, right, in life, trying to decide what they want to pursue, what they want to do that's fulfilling. And then, when we get into adulthood, we're constantly pivoting, right? It's either maybe for some it's the flavor of the month, for others it's I'll stick it out for a long time. But when we get to this point about retirement, I think it's always a matter of going back and saying, what has brought you fulfillment? What has brought you joy? What is the thing that you haven't been able to do that you've been wishing you had more time to do? What is the thing that you feel like you're really good at that you haven't been able to develop? Playing the piano, art, whatever it may be. I think it's the same kind of question that you're asking a teenager. And it's the same kind of thing you're asking somebody who served in the military for 20 years. It's, coming out now and has no idea what their skills and their passions are. And I think when you get to the stage of retirement, after working in a career for so long, you get to a place where that's just a question you've got to be able to ask. So I don't think it's really that different of a question at what I would say those three particular times of life where transition is happening.
That's good. That makes it easier to remember. You don't have to remember three things. You just got to remember one.
That's right.
That's awesome. I love it. Mike, same question, sir.
Yes. I would say dealing with calling in this season of life relative to the other seasons of life this is probably even more challenging, because I feel like a lot of our calling early on in life is connected to our families and our jobs, and it's just kind of laid out pretty naturally for us. And then all of a sudden you don't have that, and you're like, okay, what am I being called to do? And I always tell people, I don't think we're, unlike the secular messaging, I don't think we're being called to a life of 100% leisure. I think leisure is important, but I do think we're being called to something more than that. It talks about in Ephesians 2:10 that you were called for good works. And I always tell people, it doesn't say that all bets are off once you're retired. You're supposed to be doing good works through and through. So I think this is a big reset. And I think you really got to take an inventory of what are your current talents? What are you passionate about? Where do you see opportunities to make that happen? Share a quick story with you. I was listening to a podcast. They had a guy on there. He's in his early 80s. He's an executive coach and mentor, and he's still doing it. And he wrote a book called Decade by Decade, and it was just based on some observations that he made. So he went through the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. He said the most productive decade from his observation was the 60s. Second was the 70s. Third was the 50s. Had nothing to do with working 80 hours a week. It had everything to do with impact, influence, wisdom. And so I'm constantly telling my peers that your best days can be ahead of you, that it's not time to to pack it in that you can do some amazing stuff.
Well, that's super encouraging for me because I'm in my 40s and it didn't even make it in his top 3. I'm already feeling like I'm pretty efficient with my time. Man, an 80-year-old Fritz is going to be practically unstoppable. I'm excited when I get to be level 80. I'm going to be like, get out of the way.
He did say the caveat though is you got to stay healthy.
There's that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But you're running marathons.
I'm running marathons. I mean, I think that's got to count for something. So, Vona, over to you. What's the next question?
At first, I want to just say, Fritz, that one of the things that I really try to hit with people is it's never too early to start finishing well.
Mm-hmm.
And think about the impact that you're making where you are and how you can build on that to transition in that next phase. So you're at the perfect place right now with this conversation about retirement. Yes. So
I'm just building like a fiend over here. Yep.
I just appreciate the opportunity that you brought us to have this conversation. So the next question for Dan and Mike are, how can people integrate their spiritual calling into both their use of time and their financial planning? And let's start with Dan this time.
Yeah. So time and planning, and to me, it's always a matter of how do we discern, right? How do we discern that it is from God? How do we know that there's a spiritual element to it and that we're not really just motivated by money or what we want? And that's a really important thing. I think as we get older, we have to be really careful because we're getting pulled in a lot of different directions. And my wife will tell me this. I'm guilty of this, right? Sometimes it's squirrel, right? It's the shiny new thing, right? And be like, I didn't even finish that yet, right? And she'll tell me, so remind me, are you really ready? You want to really take on something else that you're not going to finish, right? Why don't you finish, one of these big dreams that you have, one of these big things that you have it laid out in front of you. So I think when you're thinking about setting aside money, I thought Amanda did a really great job of talking about some of that. If travel is something that you want, if leaving financial stability to your children is something, whatever that is, I think you have to bring it before the Lord and say, Lord, if this is really from you, if you're going to honor this, then just give me clarity in that. Is this thing that I'm about to get into, is this from you or not? And then as this kind of gets into the last question, I'll answer as well. But to me, it's about, you need the clarity from God, but you also need people to help you with that clarity. And so I'll save that for the third question.
Sounds good. Thank you. Mike, same question.
Yeah, the word that jumps out for me, especially when it comes to time, is the word intentional. My observation has been most people are not super intentional with their time. And one of the things, I work with a lot of people in the second half of life, and one of the things I hear all the time is, Mike, I don't know where the time goes. I feel busier now than I was when I was working. And yet when they look back, they don't really have a lot to show for it. So I feel like, especially if you're going to live out your calling, intentionality is so important as you move forward. The other thing that I hear is people say, well, I probably don't need as much structure in my life now that I'm moving into this season of life. And the reality is you probably need it more than you've ever needed it, because once again, time can get away from you. And then as far as the financial piece, I think, depending on what you're called to do, you could be impacted financially. I mean, you may be required to move. You may be required to be more generous. You may be required to adjust your lifestyle. So be careful what you wish for on the calling, because it can impact you financially. And I'm not suggesting that's a bad thing. It just means that you may have to make some adjustments.
Yeah. I like that. In fact, I could go on that forever and I won't, but I will say that I got so wrapped up in the worldly cause for, you got to make more money, you got to make more money. And I feel like the lesson that God has taught me in retirement is, I have already provided for you. Go do those things that I've asked you to do. And it's so easy to get caught in that trap.
Yeah.
Fritz has asked me to ask the next set of questions because he's gotten some background noise where he's at. So I'm going to go, and we're going to start with you this time, Mike. What are some ways retirees can guard against drifting into aimlessness? And I think you just started to talk about that a little bit once their career chapter closes.
Yeah, I think you got to be very intentional with your time. I think about that a lot. The other thing is a lot of people today are very isolated. And so I think community, I know as I get older, that's becoming more and more important to me, but you got to stay in community. But I also think that you got to pay attention to who you allow in your sphere. I mean, we over the years, we get pulled in all these directions and meet all these people. And I just find that you get into this season, I think you got to be very selective about who you allow in. I always say to my daughter, you will be the average of the 5 people that you hang out the most with. So pay attention to who you're hanging out with. I don't think this is a new one, but I think continual growth and learning is very, very important. I think a lot of people feel like in this season, well, I don't really have to grow anymore. What's there to learn? I don't. And I think to me, it could be one of the richest seasons of your life as far as growing and learning. Talked a little bit about the structure, around your time. And then I think Dan had brought this up earlier. I think where a lot of people get sideways is whatever their setup is, they just can't find meaning and purpose in it. Mm-hmm. And as I like to say to people, just because you're retired doesn't mean the meaning and purpose equation goes away. It probably becomes even more important because you realize you're in this last season of life and you want it to count for something. And so I think a lot of people struggle with that. And that's where we all have to put in the work to make sure that there's meaning and purpose in our life.
Yeah, excellent point. Thank you. Dan.
Yeah, well, not surprisingly, I second everything Mike said there. I mean, that's, there was some real great wisdom. I think for me, I would add 2 elements. I would add accountability and vulnerability, right? Mike talked about community. I think we have to have people we're actually accountable to for it. And again, I just mentioned my wife. I'm grateful in this season. I've become probably far more willing, right? And that's where the vulnerability comes in, willing to say, to hear, what do you think of this? And to say, well, and she asks great questions and she'll sometimes push back on things that I might be looking at. And I might, my eyes might be wide open and it'd be just like, that's the 9th thing that you're taking. And do you really want to be able to do that? And will you really fulfill your purpose if you spread yourself so thin, right? So I think we have to have those people that we're accountable to in that community, right? Lots of people kind of with input, but who's going to actually hold our feet to the fire? And then, and with that comes that vulnerability. You have to be willing to hear it. When somebody is willing to kind of hold your feet to the fire, it burns, right? At times. And so you have to be willing to have those people in your life where you're not going to walk away and reject it because it's not what you want to hear. You're actually willing to accept it and say, thank you for that, because I think you just saved me from going down a rabbit hole that might have taken my time and my resources away. So I second Mike, and I would add those 2 pieces to it.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Are you with us again, Fritz?
I am. Our neighbor had his Corvette going and it just didn't even go anywhere. He just ran it for like 15 minutes in his garage. I'm like, well, okay, that's cool. He's just got to blow out the pipes. Well, the next stage that we've got is questions for individual panelists. The first one is going to be for Amanda. Question I've got for you is, you specialize in group travel that fosters connection. How have you seen travel transform someone's vision for the retirement years?
So I'm actually going to talk about my parents because both of my parents are at that age to retire. And I recently had the pleasure of taking each of them on an international trip. I took my dad to Turks and Caicos and my mom on an Alaska cruise. And after they both came back, it's so funny because my parents, they have traveled a lot throughout their life. And they were like, we're going to just stay here in our home here in St. Louis. We don't really need to travel. And then all of a sudden, they started talking about how they want to travel more now that they're about to retire, which I think is hilarious that they said something different. And now that I've taken them and traveling, they're getting that travel bug again. So they're actually talking about getting an RV and just traveling the United States and going to all 50 states and just seeing the world. So honestly, travel can really transform you to be like, you know what? There's so much out there to see. I don't want to just sit here and be a lump on a log and just not really do anything effective with the rest of my life once I retire. This is a chance to get out into the world and share God's love with others.
That's super encouraging. That's super encouraging.
Love that.
Yeah.
So continuing on with Amanda, what's one creative travel idea you've seen that made retirement feel more purposeful?
Yes. So this is actually a part of my niche. I currently work with coaches and I help them create another stream of income through hosting retreats. And I have seen coaches that are close to that retirement age where they're starting to talk about travel and getting closer to their clients or customers through an in-person experience, and that is in retreats. So when you host a retreat, that gives you a chance to get closer to your clientele, gives you a chance to pour into them, give back to them. And I love working with kingdompreneurs, people that love the Lord. And so a lot of the times they're incorporating in worship, Bible study, meditation, things of that nature. And that in itself, we are put here on this earth for one purpose and one purpose of all. It is to grow God's kingdom. And so when I'm helping these people create these transformational experiences, and then they come back to me and say, oh my gosh, this person was drifting away from God and they now have such a strong, powerful relationship with God through this retreat. It is so empowering for both of us.
It's amazing. Yes. Thank you.
Awesome. So Amanda, how can retirees make travel a regular life-giving habit without it becoming financially or logistically stressful?
That's a good question. I always recommend work with a financial advisor, especially if you are maybe in your 30s or 40s and you haven't really started putting away money for retirement. Because again, back to what I said before, a lot of people say they're going to travel when they retire. So it's really important to have those funds put away, not just for your regular day-to-day life, but also for your travel. And then for me, I became a travel advisor because I never want to retire. So that's an idea in itself. You could start a whole new profession and become a travel agent, travel for free or super discounted. That in itself could be super fun. There's so many different things you can do in the travel world that could make it super simple and easy for you to travel a lot more. Vona and I have actually had this discussion. So there is opportunity out there where you can still work and be able to travel for super cheap, free, or even get paid to travel.
That resonates with me. Because I'm in my 40s and I feel like I'm never going to retire because I keep finding fun things to do that ends up making money. And it's like, I don't ever want to stop working. I'm having too much fun.
I feel you on that
yeah.
one.
Well, we got Dan up next on the docket. So what's the first question for Dan, my dear?
Dan, you help people with their God-given calling, which I think is wonderful. How do you approach that conversation with someone who thinks that their calling is really all tied up into their career?
I think you have to go back to scripture. I mean, the new kind of slogan, I guess I would say in all my work is around made for more, right? Made for more. And made for more means, we're always seeking to do more for the kingdom, right? And so when we look at calling tied to career, that there's a season for that. God called you, gave you certain talent, gave you an ability to make an impact where you were. But what else is there? What are, again, going back to before, what are some other areas that you can make an impact? And have you taken the time to think about that? Just even thinking of relationships and other, have you been a volunteer coach and had an impact on kids? Whatever else it may be, just to start looking at outside the work, where have you had impact? Where have you felt like purpose and fulfillment? And start exploring that and then see where God leads with those doors. Will he spring those doors wide open, or will he close those doors and move you in another direction?
Yeah, he can be pretty direct about some of that, can't he?
And slam that door pretty hard in our face at times, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I guess that's a sign I shouldn't go this direction, said the person who just got their door slammed in their face.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
So
well,
Dan,
I always say it this way, Mike. That's kind of related. I always say it this way, right? I mean, look, Jonah was going to get to Nineveh one way or the other, right? So he could have made the journey, simple and just been obedient, or you get mixed in with the vomit coming out of the whale's mouth, right? I mean, but one way or another, that's where he was going to end up. right? So you choose your path in being obedient or not, right? Which goes into the next question. Ask it and I'll
Yeah.
respond.
He has chosen the hard way. So Dan, what is one question you wish every retiree would ask themselves before they step away from work?
I think that comes down, it's to the why question. It's, why, and the pro and con list, right, is still, it's something you start again back in the search for college and career and where you want to go as an adolescent. I don't think it changes as an adult. What are the pros and cons? What are the things you have to consider? And primarily, when you look at those things that are the good and the bad, which of those are driven by your kind of your human interest and your human desire, and which of those are driven by what feels truly like a move of the spirit? Like, I just can't shake this, right? I just can't get this out of my head. I feel like it's got to be from God. And the thing I want to point out about that, because I experienced this. I mean, you talk about retiring. Like, I retired first at age 47, right? So Vona knows my story, but what I retired to at that time was not what God was preparing me for. What he was preparing me for was what was going to come after that. But he needed to get me out of the comfort zone that I was in. And so I felt motivated and I felt led that this is where the Lord wants me. And it wasn't for that season. It was for the season that followed. So I think that's where we have to be able to say, is this me or is this you, Lord? And sometimes the Lord will say, no, it's from me, but be patient, because it's not the now that I'm really preparing you for. It's what's next.
I love that. To me, this next question is tied around kind of our identity and what the world tells us we should be. But how do faith-based leaders in retirement continue to influence and serve without a title? That title is so big.
And yet it's not, right?
Right. Well, I'm just saying
Right?
that we've been led to believe it is.
Right. And yet it's not, because the fact is that God puts people in our lives all the time. What are we doing with the people that he puts in front of us every day, right? And whether that has a business component to it, where we're looking to hire a client, or whether we're looking to build our network, God gives us every day opportunities to serve and to I always say, right, I use the famous Saint Augustine phrase, right, to preach the gospel and when necessary use words, right? I mean, that becomes the way we live, title or no title. And so to me, you continue to influence and serve by continuing to serve the people and be of value to the people that God puts in front of you. And that's there's a purpose in that. And that purpose is bringing people and pointing them to him. So that would be my response to that. That doesn't require a title.
Amen. All right. Back to you, Fritz.
Awesome. So, Mike, this one's for you. These three are for you. You talk about the 5 pillars of a faith-driven retirement. Which one do people tend to overlook the most?
Yes. One thing I wanted to mention, a piece of advice I always give people is don't retire from something, but retire to something.
That's
I see
mine.
so many. Is that yours? We probably stole it from the same person, but I'm always leery of the person when you talk to them and they go, yes, I have 1 year, 14 days, 36 hours until I retire. I know that's probably not going to be good. Anyways, just so everybody that listens to this knows what the 5 pillars are, the 5 pillars, and we've kind of touched on some of these, is time, calling, a financial finish, or let me back up, maximizing time, discovering, embracing your calling, creating a financial finish line, radical generosity, and leaving a lasting legacy. So which one do people tend to overlook the most? I think all of them get overlooked, but the one that really jumps out to me is leave a lasting legacy. And I'll tell you why I picked that one is because if you look at the stats in the United States, 2/3 of Americans have done nothing when it comes to their estate planning. And so I kind of put 2 and 2 together and said, well, if they're not even doing that, then they're probably not giving a lot of thought to legacy. And I think a lot of people don't want to deal with this. A lot of people procrastinate on it because it deals with morbidity and mortality, and they don't really want to think about it. It's interesting, in the wealth management firm that I'm a partner in, we created this whole platform called estate mapping, which is unlike anything I've seen in all my years. And because I try to practice what I preach, my wife and I went through the process with one of our younger advisors, and it was life changing because number one, it got my wife and I talking about these things. And there were things that just came up that even from previous conversations never came up. And so I always tell people that when you do this legacy planning, as painful as it may be to you, it's an act of love towards your loved ones, because you're basically saying, I love you so much that I just want to make sure that everything is in order and you know where I stand when my time is up.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. Over to you, Ms. Vona.
Thank you. So, Mike, how do you help clients define the financial finish line in a way that feels freeing instead of restrictive?
Yeah. So one of the pillars is kind of a concept most people haven't heard of, but one of the pillars is creating a financial finish line. I was actually just on another podcast called The Finish Line Pledge. These two brothers do that, which is really cool. But the underlying question is this: when is enough enough? When is enough enough? I've met so many people that have more than enough, and I can prove it to them mathematically, and they still don't think they have enough. And so they live in this state of stress in this season of life, which is totally unnecessary. And what's interesting about having a finish line is that when you have a finish line, it naturally will lead to more contentment in your life, because you're like, hey, I got this. I'm good. I'm going to be fine. And so when we talk about finish lines, it basically breaks down into three different things. Number one, how much will you need for you or you and your spouse? You need to get a handle on that. Number two, how much do you want to leave for your loved ones? And number three, what are you going to do with the excess? And so there's a little bit of tension around all three of those, but once you get a handle on it, you can get to a financial finish line and live in a place of much less stress and much more contentment.
Awesome.
Love it. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, the last question we've got in this gauntlet of interrogation, I'm kidding. It's been incredibly blessing. It's really good. So, Mike, last question for you, sir. What's one story where someone completely shifted their retirement outlook by putting biblical principles first?
Yeah, I thought about this question, and I've got people that I'm working with that are in, kind of different states of play, but I thought, you know what? Probably the best example is my wife and I. I mean, we are in this, this season that we're talking about, and we've been very intentional with our time. We've been very intentional with our calling. We don't believe in the traditional retirement. There's a great quote by a guy named Mitch Anthony. He said, retirement is a balancing act between vocation and vacation. We're not like, don't go have fun, don't go vacation, don't travel. No, you should be having fun. But coming back to kind of the meaning and purpose thing, there has to be this balance between vocation and vacation. And, we spent a lot of time thinking about, I mean, it's always a work in progress, because things change, but we always think about the finish line. One of the things that I talk to people about that we're trying to live out in this season is a giving plan. A lot of people, when I ask them, do you have a giving plan? They've never really thought about that. So we're being much more intentional with our generosity. And then, as I said, we just went through a whole process, took about 7 months, and really leaned into the legacy thing. And it's very important for me that everything is buttoned up at the end. And I've lived a life that I will be remembered for the things that I want to be remembered for.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. I think to close us out tonight, it's important to remember that it's not a morbid thing to talk about retirement. I think in the US, people equate that with just have a pile of money to live on until you can coast and die. It's like, no, it's not. It's like it's a change. It's a seasonal change. It's not bad. It's not negative. I mean, if you think about it, we go through life retiring from one thing into another all the time. It's not the last time we're going to retire from something into something else, but having the overall thinking ahead in terms of legacy, not waiting until you're in your 60s to start, oh, shoot, I should probably build a legacy for my kids and grandkids. Oh, my goodness, I wasted it. That's not the goal. That's not the goal, is to think ahead of it a little bit.
May I?
Yeah.
I come at it from the perspective that our legacy isn't the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Our legacy is the decisions we make every single day, the way we respond to the people in our lives. And if I might, my dad passed away about 6 weeks ago. We had to postpone this event because we were doing a funeral. And what was so beautiful about that is he was an auctioneer, but the rest of his time he spent like announcing rodeos, and he was the champion for all the young people. I had 50, 60-year-old women coming up to me and people coming up to me and saying, your dad inspired me in ways that no one else ever did. He made me feel like I was the best kid on that rodeo ring. And what was so cool about that is my son walked away from that service saying, that's the legacy I want to leave too. Now that's a legacy.
That's awesome.
It is. Sounds like we're all cut from the same cloth and we come from good stocks.
You guys were amazing. Right. You hit the nail on the head, and I'm just so blessed to have spent this time with you guys today.
Yeah.
All of you.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Vona. Appreciate you.
Everybody.
Wasn't that great? I just enjoyed that conversation so much. There were so many good tips in there that we can carry forward as you begin to think about your retirement, whether you're 20 years away from it and are looking for ways to finish well and prepare, or if you're already in it, like our guest Michelle was during the conversation, and are just thinking of ways that you can tweak your experience to make it even more richer and fulfilling. I thank you for stopping by today. I will leave the contact information in the show notes if you want to get a hold of any of the panelists today. I'm just so grateful for each one of them to show up and bring all of that wonderful information. If you are really wanting to go deeper into how you can answer God's call to more in your retirement, I invite you to join Club More. Basically, you take a pledge that you're going to be all that you can be, and then we'll just have conversations in my community, Club More. You'll be a part of my mailing list and see where other opportunities come. I think this is an important time in our history. We don't know when our time is up. We don't know if tomorrow comes, but we do know that we need to use every minute that we have available to us to show the love of Christ. And that's what I want to invite you into in Club More and Courageous Retirement, is to have the courage to speak up and say what needs to be said to show truth in love. Thank you for coming by. I'll see you back here in 2 weeks where we will carry on the conversation of courageous retirement. Until then, go be blessed. Remember to always, always engage your faith and live your more.